Hey, all you classic people. This is America, Episode 3, July 31st, 2013. I'm Patrick, joined here with Sean.
Yo, what's up?
Ashley.
Hey, guys.
And André.
Hello.
So today we're just going to talk more about gaming and what we all been playing games on. And to start things off, what is everyone up to this week? Has anyone done anything new? Has anyone played any new games?
My arm is sore as hell, so my gaming has been limited, at least for the past 48 hours.
From what? From playing games or from drawing or what?
No, new tattoo.
Oh, getting ink done.
Yeah, been working on this thing for a good 6 months and finally finished it yesterday, so pretty happy.
Wait, you've been working on getting the tattoo inked, or you've been working on the design for 6 months?
From start to finish, this entire process has been about 6 months.
Okay.
Is it a heart with mom in it?
No, André. It is not a heart with mom in it.
I don't love my mom. Just kidding.
If it is not something geeky, it does not go on my left arm. So, yeah.
Well, what is it?
Happy with it.
What, the suspense.
It's a Final Fantasy Online sleeve. It's Final Fantasy 14 on one side and Final Fantasy 11 on the other.
Oh, cool.
And it looks cool as hell, and I'm really happy with it. But it's still really fresh and really sore, and the skin is really raw, so I can't really move or do much except sit here.
So is it like the logo, or is it a character, or is it like a picture of the login screen, or like what is it?
So me and 3 of my friends have played together for like, I don't know how long, 7-8 years. And so it's one of each of our characters from one of the respective games, and then 2 of the main huge story bosses, one from each game.
Cool.
So I'll post pictures of it online somewhere.
Yeah,
actually, I think one half of it is floating around on IGN or something.
Oh.
Because my husband submitted it. They were doing a search for gaming tattoos, and my husband submitted it without my knowledge.
Nice.
So it's on the interwebs somewhere.
Excellent. Very
but
cool.
yeah, but before that, I was gaming quite a bit. I have a lot to talk about this week, so I think we should get into it.
Well, talking about something, I guess, less permanent would be Microsoft's stance on Xbox indie self-publishing. Let's see. So the news with that is they came out and announced that they're going to allow for self-publishing on the Xbox One for indie developers. The big crux of it was they came out and said that every console that's sold can be turned into a developer's unit. And that has pretty big ramifications in terms of how people develop games and their view of console games. And, you know, this is a view that's kind of been reserved for, you know, the Apple and the iTunes market in terms of just using the hardware that you have as a developer hardware for the platform. So there's a lot of still speculation surrounding it, I guess, because they haven't come out and given any details about it, but they're saying that at Gamescom, I think, that they're going to release more information about it. So what did you guys hear regarding this? What are some of the stories or things that people are praising, things that other fanboys are hating? What have you guys heard?
I don't know. I thought it was really exciting. I'm just apprehensive about what we'll see because I didn't even realize that this didn't already exist, because I don't know if you guys have browsed the indie titles on the arcade, but there are some pretty bunk ones that are out already, and I didn't realize that these ones had backing from actual developers. So, I mean, I'm just wondering, are we going to see some real gems, or are we going to see more of, like, just the crap that we've become accustomed to with the indie titles on Xbox Arcade, like, you know, where you play a chimp, or, you know, do a puzzle game where it shows a naked anime girl, and et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. We'll have to see.
I think there's not much to hate about it. They're making a system that's more open, which is really cool. They definitely weren't clear about what sort of indie support there will be until this point, so it's really good to hear that they're still, you know, recognizing that growing market that's really important to them. And then I guess the only other thing that we know for sure is that the whole dev kit functionality won't be available at launch, but they're hoping to add it pretty soon afterwards. But It's something that's going to be some sort of software patch, I guess, because if it's going to be, added to any Xbox One post-launch, then it's going to be some sort of update that they'll be able to just sort of unlock all the inner workings of it.
Yeah, it might not even be like a big patch or anything like that. It from what I've heard a little bit, they, you can basically tell Microsoft like, hey, I'm wanting to develop some games for the Xbox One. I want to be a developer, and they would get your gamer tag, and they would know what kind of what your system specs are or whatever, which they're all the same for the Xbox One. But I guess all the peripherals that you've had, if you've had an Xbox 360 before, all your information is all underneath your gamer tag, and they would essentially allow you to boot into the Xbox where it'd partition off a certain part of the hard drive, and then that would be used for as a development space. And I think the big issue is how they've approached the indie game channel in the past on the 360 was kind of meh. They held it up for probably about a year as being this like great thing, and then they kind of forgot about it, and it just kind of ran this course of crap games that came out on it. And I've almost always check out the indie channel whenever I log into my 360 and just peruse around, and all of the games on the indie channel are Minecraft clones to some extent, and naked anime girl puzzles, I guess. And so I've found a few games on there that are pretty fun, but they were also bound in that XNA atmosphere that Microsoft pushed and stuff, and I guess they've kind of given up on. So it's almost like they're going back to square one with this, which is good. But I think the quality of the games is really going to matter on the approach that Microsoft takes with this thing. Are they going to try to mimic the iTunes marketplace? In which case, I am scared. And truly allow anyone to self-publish something and with minimal type of scrutiny, and then anyone can put it up at any time, and you're going to get tons of free-to-play games and which is funny because it's ultimately dominated by, like, if you look at the iTunes store, EA has a pretty big hand in that, and Zynga, and then the other like kind of sketchy free-to-play like big businesses that make tons of games and make tons of money. Not that that's a bad thing, but I hope that there's some sort of certification process and quality process that they're doing with it. I think that's going to be the big difference between the type of indie games that you see popping up on PS4 versus the ones that we're going to see on the Xbox One. They may have totally different feels. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be indie games the same games that come out on both platforms that are the same, but the ones that are really built like for the system, we'll see if there's a difference between them or not. But
yeah, it's very interesting that you said I can't even remember now.
Did I talk too long? I'm sorry.
No,
I was almost out of breath. I was like,
I wanted to say something about the community, where there's a system that Steam has. I believe it's called the
Greenlight.
Exactly, the Greenlight system, and I believe that will be a very good source of tool that would use for the Xbox One marketplace. So you would essentially have this basically just like the Greenlight. Where you have it on the apps for Microsoft, whatever, or in the place where the indie games are at, and that would be a good way to filter out all the mediocre games versus the higher.
Maybe
you would think, right?
The problem with Greenlight, and Valve has even acknowledged this, is it very quickly turns into a popularity contest. And how good are you at getting your game out there to certain networks that have diehard fanboys where they would go and vote for your game, and then not only that, but go and downvote the other games. It's Greenlight has its own issues, and I'm hoping that it's more like what the PS4 has kind of done, where if you're an indie and you want to put your game on PSN, what you do is you go to a website and you fill out all this information. They look at how complete your game is, how far along are you, and then they'll check out your game. Like, they have people at Sony whose job is to find indie games and that are good quality and awesome and all that stuff, and then help get them onto the platform. So, like, they've even helped, I think they've helped fund some games. I couldn't tell you which ones they were, but they've helped fund in terms of, like, they've provided development kits for people and kind of gone out of their way for games that they think will sell well on PSN and that people will enjoy. And so I'm hoping that something that we won't hear about, I don't think, in the news, I don't think they're going to go into much detail in terms of how this works, because Sony hasn't done it either, but I think the most important part of allowing these indie developers to self-publish, so to say, is the process of the people that work at Microsoft and work at Sony that go out of their way, you know, or whose job it is to specifically look at each game and decide, oh, this is going to be a great game. How far along is it? Okay, we can, you know, we expect it to sell this much. We'll give you some advertising space, you know, all that kind of stuff, and kind of like promotion through them, I think is going to be huge. And unfortunately, all you kind of hear about in the spaces of the internet is just like, oh, well, they've turned every Xbox into a dev unit, and, you know, which is cool. But, you know, we just don't know anything about it yet, so it's cool. I'm excited to see where it's going to go.
Going back to to Sony's approach, I've only ever downloaded a couple PSN Store exclusive titles, but the ones I have I downloaded Journey and Unfinished Swan, and those were both fantastic. I guess it just depends on how they decide they're going to, like you said, go about selecting what makes it in and what doesn't. Even if they decided that they were if they were just gonna let anyone do whatever they wanted, they could even take an approach where, like, they have a featured section where they've plucked out the ones that they consider the best and the ones that have the most polish, and then you wouldn't have to spend so much time wading through all the crap to find the good stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's my big concern, is fishing through pages and pages of really bad games and taking a chance and hoping that I find a good one.
Well, that's what Apple's been trying to figure out ever since they launched the store. Like, what is the best way to get the good titles up on the front page so people can see them? And the sad thing about that is what happens is you get things that are newly released. You get a really small list, like, you know, so many titles of things that are brand new releases, or you can view it by bestsellers. And what that does is, like, you're up on the marketplace. Like, if you're a developer and you release a game and, you know, let's say it's not super mainstream, or it's not, you know, it's not able to compete against the EA car racing game, but you think it's a good car racing game with, you know, certain mechanics and all that stuff. Like, you go up on the new section for so many days, and people see your game and they download it. But if it doesn't blow up and get onto that top sellers list, then it's like gone into the abyss. And people have a really hard time stumbling across something like that unless they specifically go and look for it. And that's something that Apple's been trying to figure out for a while. So it's a real complicated thing.
That kind of surprises me. I was under the impression that the screening process for the App Store was already pretty intense. More so than the Google Play Market or whatever Windows and BlackBerry have.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the screening process, like, in terms of finding, like, having your game up to a certain standard is there, but you know, like, they don't allow you to, like, you know, make automatic, you know, purchases, and, you know, they have their certain certification requirements, but in terms of having your game released and then having it, like, where people can browse to find it, is still really, really janky, and it's really hard to browse through there and just find interesting stuff because of the way that it's organized. And then, like I said, once you go off of, like, the new releases page, if your game doesn't blow up, like, overnight, then it just seems to go away.
Sounds tough.
Well, yet it will be very interesting to see what will happen, because it might be really awesome. I want to see some new Kinect games that indie people make. I want to see just more.
Yes, I didn't even think about that.
That's gonna be awesome if you think about it, like how cool that can turn into. We actually had a developer at Columbia who made a Kinect game. He spent like a good 8 months just doing it. It turned out pretty cool, but, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's something different. There's not a lot of Kinect games that have a difference in what you can do. I mean, you've obviously the self-titles that Microsoft put out, but I really think it'd be awesome to see just some new stuff, you know?
Well, the way that we've seen innovation come out of the indie scene, you know, over the last so many years, I mean, that's really the place where a lot of innovation happens, because they're able to take those chances. And so, that's exciting.
Totally.
I know that Microsoft did a fantastic job of just embracing the third-party applications that have been developed for the Kinect. I mean, they did a commercial for it that aired on TV where people were using the Kinects for non-Xbox purposes. And actually, I've used my Kinect for those functions more so than on my Xbox. Like, some of them are just awesome. There was one out there where you can use your Kinect to control your character in an MMO, and you just assign keybinds to different body movements, and it's awesome because you can play your MMO and get exercise at the same time.
Wow.
So I'm that's a really good point, Patrick. Actually, I'm really excited to see what they come out with for Kinect. I didn't even think about that.
Hell, people have been using it to make 3D models of stuff just by panning the camera around an object and then, having a software process it. They can actually create a really quick and dirty 3D model of anything.
Wow, that's smart.
Nice.
Damn.
So I'm not entirely familiar with dev kits as far as consoles go. So when you get a dev kit for a console, what exactly do you have access to that the normal consumer doesn't?
Yeah, you have access to debug modes and all sorts of things where, you're allowed to pause the hardware and go in and basically like break your game so you can, step through certain parts in slow motion. You can see how many objects are in the scene, how many, how much memory usage, your audio's taking up. It basically creates a like a PC development environment. It's kind of like using a game engine on a PC, but it allows the console to do that and the software to do that and stuff. And then, you can load and deploy builds onto it. The reason why they have dev kits that they give out to companies and stuff like that, and they haven't in the previous had every console just be the same. And the reason why they lock them down for the consumers is just so people can't develop their own software for it or take someone else's software and start debugging it and add things to it or take things away or break it, or pirate things or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, having a closed system makes it much harder for mod chips to be made and for them to get around different security, restrictions, things like that. And having it open makes it essentially makes all of the programming of the software and of the hardware transparent, so you know exactly what's doing what.
I'm just curious how they're going to regulate it, because
that's what's going to have the most say in how this stuff kind of goes down and stuff. So,
well, keeping in mind, the intellect and capacity for exploitation that today's technological society has, that someone's going to find a way to exploit it, or at least try. So yeah, regulatory issues on this will be pretty interesting.
Yeah,
we'll just have to see what they say at Gamescom.
Yeah. I don't got a good segue for Walking Dead, but
well, before I incapacitated myself by going under the needle for 4 or 5 hours, I picked up all the episodes of The Walking Dead in a Humble Bundle and got through the first episode and 20 or 30 minutes of the second. I'm a big fan of the entire franchise, watched the show, read the comics, so I've really enjoyed it so far. I was a big fan of point-and-click adventure games when I was younger, the Myst series, Monkey Island, things like that, so I've gotten a lot of enjoyment out of it so far. Have any of you guys played it at all?
Yes, I really liked it. It was a very different game. I really haven't played something like it before. And since the fact I did watch a little bit of the Walking Dead series, it was cool to kind of see like a new perspective on it. I believe this was the one. It wasn't related to the comic book series at all. Does anyone?
No, the original comic that the TV series is based off of follows the plot of the TV series.
Okay. And
you do run into, well, so far in episode 1, I have run into a couple characters who make appearances in the original comic and the show, but it is an entirely new story. It's just focusing on a different group of survivors.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people had problems with it because they were just like, oh, well, it's all story-based. There's no excitement or anything. And first of all, the company who made it is called Telltale. What were you expecting?
Very true. Very true. I actually liked the tutorial very much.
What was it's been a while since I've played episode 1. I recently beat episode 2, but we'll talk about that in maybe next time. I hope, because it's really fucking good. But but what was the tutorial like again?
Well, the way I remember it is it obviously told you, proper controls to use. Essentially, the entire episode starts off as you're a convict being transported to prison. I think, And, he crashes, you get out, and you're trying to, you're learning the controls. You learn the action sequences where you look at something and it says press A to do this, or grab that, and everything's time-based. So you'll have a certain amount of time in order to get everything before it's too late and you get eaten by a zombie or whatever. So it did all that, but it kind of continued because the game, not just you have to look at something, say yes or I want to pick it up, or I want to try and break the lock or whatever. You have to interact with people, and your interaction affects your next. I guess your interaction affects the progress of your character in the game. Mm-hmm. And when you're on the farm, I actually screwed up my story. You're supposed to tell it's the farmer that you go to after you get out the little town. You save the girl. You go to the farmer's house, and you're talking to him, and he's like, "Well, where do you come from?" And you have to say, "I came from so and so," but you had to stick with that story. Well, I went ahead and just said something different almost every time.
Yeah.
So at the fourth time, he was like, "You really can't be saying this because no one's gonna be able to trust you. I know where you probably came from maybe wasn't a good place, but don't lose the trust of others." And it was I was blown. I was like, holy shit, like, damn, that just went down. That was probably the coolest tutorial I've ever been through because it kind of snuck up on me. Like, oh,
yeah,
I didn't know I was still learning about the game. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, whenever you're playing, like that kind of keeps happening, and you start really taking note of whenever you make decisions in the game, they will give you like a line of text up in the top left-hand corner that kind of just shows the ramifications of the decision that you just made. And those turn into some of the most stressful things, Like someone will ask for like a candy bar or something, they'll ask for something and you'll reply to them and, say like, no, we don't have time for this or whatever. And then it'll say in the top left-hand corner, like, so-and-so will remember that, And
it's like, wait, what? No.
Yeah, it gets kind of stressful, Yeah. The time is always moving forward in that game. That's what I like about it, is like time is always moving forward, where even your answer of I don't have an answer is an answer, right? Like whenever whenever people are asking you questions and you can choose not to answer, and because one of the answers is always like, the aggressive approach. One of the answers is always like, I'm trying to be the nice guy or whatever. And then they'll have one, you can press X, I think, if you're playing with the Xbox controller, and it just says ... And like if you don't pick that, or if time goes by, because you have a time limit to make each decision in the game, and if that time limit ends, then that is your answer, and they'll reply, and they'll just be like, oh, not the talkative type, see, and move on like that. And it's really good. It's engaging, It's one of those games you can't, like, it feels like you're watching these, you're watching these cutscenes, or you're watching the story, develop, and you're not actively doing something, and then out of the blue something will happen and you'll go, oh shit, so you can't take your hands off the controller. That's just a tip to you guys moving forward. I mean, it's crazy. So yeah, it's a really, really good game. And then the moral decisions that they throw at you are something that most games don't do effectively at all, and they've been trying to do in games for a long time, and this is one of the few games that actually makes you question this morality and then gives you 20 seconds to do it.
Yeah, the choice consequence relation in the game has a real level of depth that don't think I've ever seen in a game like this before, or in any game where they claim that you make choices and your choices have consequences. Like, I was trying to side with one family in particular basically the whole way through because everyone else was being a dick to me. And then when I got to the second episode, the family that I'd been trying to, put my allegiance toward, the dad was like, well, you've been fucking with us the whole time, so, I don't think we want to help you out. And I was like, wait, what? So I'm really impressed with it so far, and it's not the least bit predictable, so that's really enjoyable for me. And like you said, Sean, just the amount of moral choices that you have to make in a very short span of time don't give you the opportunity to predict what the outcome's going to be anyways. Like, you have to make that choice as quickly as you can, and then just deal with the consequences as they come your way. So I've really been enjoying it so far. As soon as my arm is usable again, I'm definitely going to plow my way through the other episodes.
The second half of episode 2, like, totally hooked me back into the series. It's amazing. It takes a little build up. Like, the first half of the episode's kind of slow in a way, but they're doing a lot of setting up and a lot of foreshadowing and a lot of stuff. And oh my god, episode 2. I've only played the first 2 episodes, and episode 2 is amazing. And I actually played through it once, and then my little brother came into town and we played through it again, because he hadn't seen it yet. And I was like, you have to see this. And he actually saw all these references in it. He's a big horror movie fan, and he saw all these references in it, which I won't say. I don't want to spoil anything. But all these references I hadn't picked up on previously. And so, yeah, it's awesome. It's really, really good.
Yeah,
I'm at the part where I have to decide who to give the food to. So I'm still at kind of the slow-paced part of episode 2.
Yeah.
But now I'm really excited, so maybe I'll like pop some really strong painkillers and see if I can play it with my raw sore arm.
Oh my goodness.
Have your husband play it, and you just make the choices. Go over there.
That's actually a pretty good idea.
That tends to be how I play Mass Effect, and then my girlfriend will be like, pick this choice.
Yeah.
That's so funny. You kind of blew my mind, though, again, on the game, because it's very true. The game is unpredictable to the fact where you have an idea of how a relation would be in a situation, like the family, for example. I'm doing the same way. I'm building up so much emotion and so much, like, all of my comments have been towards this family's, I guess, I'm putting so much effort into sticking with this family. And you kind of blew that for me, but that just makes me think like, well, that makes sense, because if a family is caught in an apocalypse situation, they would want to be buddy-buddy with people in the beginning to, for survival. And then I guess they're more prone to betrayal, whereas people who are more assholes are looking out for themselves and will stay with someone if they're doing the right thing and keeping everyone alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, their motivation is more in the open.
Right. It's very interesting. Like, oh man, that's crazy.
The game isn't just awesome though because of the choices and the morality issues either. Like the directing of the game is really, really good. Like that beginning part where you're in that trailer park, or the parking lot of the motel area where you're in. The little girl Clementine is kicking that soccer ball against the barrels, And
that was fantastic.
Yeah, and like they're building all this tension, and it's so like their directing in that game is just absolutely amazing. They're master storytellers, at least they're the master storyteller in the video game medium right now, and it's I look forward to playing through the other episodes. So, but please finish episode 2 episode 2 soon, because I really want to hear your take on it. It's crazy. It gets so crazy. It's so good. It's awesome. I think it blew episode 1 out of the water. So you'll see. Yeah.
Wow.
That sounds really exciting.
Man, talking it up so much.
Yeah. It's awesome, man.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. My husband and I, we live a couple hours northeast of Atlanta, which is where basically the entire story in every form of The Walking Dead takes place.
Yeah.
And we go and visit these friends of ours, for a weekend every now and again. And they have people who come in from out of town, and they take them on like pseudo Walking Dead tours and show them places where there's been locations in the comic and where they filmed the TV show. Yeah. And so I might have to write down some of the locations where they've been, just like the little towns and stuff in the game, and go on another Walking Dead tourist tour.
I'm such a nerd. I take my microphones out there and record like the cicadas and the bugs and the all that stuff. That sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah. So André, you've been playing Loadout.
Yes,
right?
I have.
Okay, so explain what it is a little bit and the beta surrounding it and stuff.
It's a bit like a cross between a third-person TF2 with Borderlands, and it's got this really, really immature sense of humor.
Okay.
basically, like, as an example, it's currently in beta, and you can pay to get early access, and then it's like a lot of free-to-play games where you can pay money to get, they call them space bucks, is the currency. And so one of the items you can buy for 34,000 space bucks, which is, if you buy into the beta at the highest price point, which is $40, you get 35 grand. Okay. So I think this is just sort of like a random novelty item for the people who spent that much money. There is a piece of leg clothing called Axel's Rod, and it's just a censored dong that flops around. It's got soft body physics, and it flops around as the characters run and jump and dance.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
And it's censored as in like it's blurred out,
like
or
mosaicked.
Is it
like,
yeah.
Yeah. And so that's the sort of humor that's in the game. But it's deathmatch type game, so like TF2.
Okay.
But where the Borderlands sort of comes in is that there's weapon customization, so you can sort of create the crazy weapons like there were in Borderlands. So you can make a rocket launcher that spins up like a chain gun and then fires a bunch, and then you have to reload it with a huge magazine. Or you could have a rocket launcher that fires, 2-round bursts or things like that. Like there's a lot of customization that you unlock the parts for as you play the game, or you can, since it's free to play, you can buy them from the store using the space bucks.
Okay. So is it so it's only deathmatch, right? And you said it's third person, like a Team Fortress, or
it's third person. Yeah, I say Team Fortress just because it's sort of that type of short, quick games, and it's a fairly cartoony style.
Okay. Yeah. I've seen the graphics; they look really good.
There's a few different game types.
When I saw the very first screenshots, that was the vibe I got. I was like, it kind of looks like TF2.
Yeah,
and
not that's a bad thing.
And the game, from what I've seen, I've watched a little bit of gameplay. But not enough to like really understand what's going on. But like I didn't know it was just kind of team deathmatch, until you said that. But the graphics, like the fidelity of the screenshots, is pretty accurate to what the game looks like. Like I looked at the screenshots and I was like, okay, like they obviously pulled these down, rezzed them up, and whatever. And then I watched some gameplay, and it looks really good. So.
Yeah. Yeah, right
Axel's
now I think
Rod.
there's... Yeah, it's called Axel's Rod. Right now I think there's 3 game types. There's a... if you ever played Call of Duty, Kill Confirmed, where basically it's deathmatch, but you only get the points if you pick up the token that's dropped.
Nice.
There's
that's a great...
It's
great
called Death
game
Snatch, I think,
okay.
in this one.
Naturally.
So that's one of the game types. Another one is a sort of capture the flag control point hybrid. And then the third game type, which I haven't played yet, is some sort of gathering thing where there's still team-based, but one person becomes this like collector of this energy type stuff, and they have to be near a receptacle, and as however long they're near it, they get points. And then if that collector dies or if he's killed, then the other team gets a new collector. I'm not quite sure how exactly it works. Everything I've seen about it so far, everybody's saying that it's really confusing until you actually get into it and play it for a bit, and then you understand it. But so it's just those 3 game types right now because it's still in beta.
Okay. How much of it have you played?
I'm up to level 4, I think. So I've played... You can play... there's a bunch of tutorial stuff that you can do, and then there's actually a cool weapons testing ground, so you can build a weapon and then test it against a bunch of just standing and moving targets to see if it's any good, because sometimes you might build something that's just absolutely horrible. And then you can actually play a bunch of games co-op versus bots, so it'll matchmake you with other people who want to play against bots just to practice, get used to it. And then it puts you into regular matchmaking where there's a noob ladder, which is below a certain level. There's a normal ladder, which is level 1 to infinity, and then there's an elite ladder, which is level 20 and above, or something like that.
Okay. So my concern with the game is that it's going to be free to play, which I didn't know, and I actually almost wanted to buy the game, but what stopped me was the idea that it's basically centered around like versus multiplayer, and it's getting harder and harder for me to buy into those games because I buy them and I play them while they're hot, and then I quit, and go play some other games, and whenever I come back, the community is dead,
Yeah.
So what do you think are the legs with this? What do you think are some things that they've done in the game that has made it where it has some lasting appeal and would make someone want to keep playing? Like, when is the game supposed to release? Like, how long is it going to be in beta?
I'm not sure when the release date is actually slated for, because it's just on early access now on Steam.
Okay.
As for like staying power, it's hard to say because it has a lot of the charm that TF2 has, and
Right.
TF2 has been around for almost 5 years now. TF2's getting
God,
old,
really?
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
Wow.
still got a huge community. I think the weapon building is a lot of fun, and there's a lot of, you can definitely customize it to match your playstyle, so you can make it however you want it to be. There's even healing guns and things like that, so you can play a support class if you want.
Yeah, that's what I saw in the video. The gun customization was awesome.
Mm-hmm. I think really the only limitation to it in the long run is going to be that because it's a free-to-play game, a lot of it is based around that in-game marketplace. It's not really, I wouldn't say it's pay to win, but it's pay to skip sort of thing, where you can
Right.
you can get anything that you want to get in the game by playing it, but if you want to get it quicker, you can just buy it.
That was my next question, was like every free-to-play game has some sort of paywall associated with it, whether it's really low and you can literally just play for free all the time, or there's a certain point where you just say, like, wow, this is just a huge waste of time. Why don't I spend the $5 and save myself like 3 weeks of grinding, kind of thing. So do you? I know it's beta, but do they have the paywall instituted yet, or is there? What does it look like it's going to be?
I think it's going to be pretty accessible. Like, one of the big areas for the marketplace, I guess, where you're paying real money, is just customization. It's just cosmetic stuff. It's it's the Axel's rod, or it's different shirts, different hairdos, things like that. Where it comes into the actual gameplay is just purchasing weapon parts for the customization, because when you build a weapon, you can modify the base. So if you build an assault rifle type weapon, you can modify it, but you can't ever change it off of being an assault rifle type weapon. I guess that's sort of how they stop people from just constantly changing the same gun over and over and over. But other than that, you can always go back and edit it. So as long as you have the parts for it, you could have just one loadout that you're happy with and switch it around.
Right.
And you, as far as I know, you start with a fairly good handful of like one of every single different type of part, so you can test them out. And then you unlock them fairly often. After every game, it spins a little, instead of a prize wheel, it's a saw blade. But you can win space bucks, or you can win parts and things like that. And you also get parts for leveling up by playing.
Yeah.
So I haven't played enough of it to really know if it's going to be super grindy to get a lot of the parts, or if it's... And it might depend on if you're going really crazy, designing all sorts of different guns, or if you're just being a little more conservative with it. So it's hard to say.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like they have some good potential to create a game that if they do the balancing right, really don't make it feel like it's pay to win, and just basically kind of do what Call of Duty has been striving to do, and I think they've done a pretty good job lately, is make it where you unlock customization stuff, which basically opens up different styles of play instead of opening up bigger and badder guns. And so that sounds cool. I'll check that out with you, man. Give me updates on it, and let me know like when it's supposed to come out of early access and all that stuff, and we'll go around and own some dudes.
It sounds like they've addressed my only concern that I've ever had with pay to win, in which there are things you can only get if you pay real physical money for them. And me being the frugal and stubborn person that I am, I don't enjoy spending money for digital items. Plus, I get great satisfaction out of the sense of accomplishment that I get when I actually earn them. So as long as any game, doesn't really matter what game, doesn't limit items to being purchased with money only, then I'm fine with pay to win. I mean, if people don't have anything better to do with their money, more power to them.
Yeah.
Give me access to your Steam account so I can play it. Yeah, no, I've had my eye on this. I don't know how it really did go under my radar to that it was early access and in beta. I thought it was this came out shortly after this game that I played called Special Forces Team X, and this game Special Forces Team X is it's like a military shooter, but it had cell shading, so it looked kind of like Borderlands, but it was like squad based, versus. And that's all it was. It was made by the guys who made the Blacklight Retribution series and those type of games. And this one, they kind of launched out there, and people started playing it, but it was a very small community. I forgot, it like launched next to something big, I think, and it just kind of went under the radar. And the community died so fast. It was just so sad because the gameplay was really, really good, and it's an awesome game. And like I can log in right now and there'd be 0 people playing it. And so then Loadout, I remember, popped up on Steam like shortly after kind of this Special Forces Team X game had died out, and I looked at it and I was like, this looks awesome, but like this seems like the same type of game, but obviously has better graphics, and like I know it'd play different, but like in terms of like the market it's hitting and the space that it's filling in the game world. And so I was like, I definitely don't want to pay this game. Maybe if it goes on sale and there's a big weekend, I'll pick it up. But knowing that it's free to play, like that's awesome. That's a really good move, I think, on their part. So
Sean, I know you have another Steam acquisition actually under your belt right now that you've been enjoying a great deal, and I've actually been. As soon as you told me you were playing it, I looked into it, and it looks really good, actually. So why don't you tell us about it?
Okay, I'm hoping you're talking about Van Helsing, right?
I am talking about Van Helsing.
No, I'm just kidding. So there's this game called The Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing, and it released, I guess, several months ago, and it's really, really good. So it's similar to Torchlight and Diablo type of games, where it's that third-person isometric view. Nice. But it's set in the loot grinding. Tons of mobs are coming your way, and you have all this loot to pick up and inventory management and all this stuff. It's set in the Van Helsing kind of world, so they go back to the classic monsters, like the Draculas and like stuff like that. So it's pretty cool, but the graphics are really, really good, and I think I've taken more screenshots of this game, just kind of been in awe at like how great the environments are and the lighting and the textures and all that stuff than I have any other game on my Steam list so far. And it has co-op where you can play the whole game with co-op with a buddy, just like Torchlight 2 and I guess Diablo 3. What's interesting about it is the way that the combat works. And every Van Helsing has a pet, and it's this ghost lady, and she has her own inventory, just it's not as fleshed out as yours. Like she basically has like a chess piece and a weapon and amulets and rings, and that's it. But you have a pet that has her own talent trees, and you can really set her to play how you want her to. To give you an example, right now my pet ghost lady or whatever, she's set up to play as, I've built her as a tank, and she is set as like in a defend mode where she'll like defend me. She basically like tanks for me and stuff, and anything that's like coming to attack me, she'll like intercept and tank it for me and stuff like that. And then you have, your combo systems and stuff where, like, you have 4 abilities that you use in the game. What makes the game different is, instead of having, like, 9, like you would in Diablo or World of Warcraft or something, is that you go through your talent trees and pick these abilities, but then you pick little additions to the abilities. And
yeah, the power-ups.
Right, yeah, they're called power-ups, and you use your rage. Like, you have mana for the abilities themselves, but then you build up rage whenever you're fighting by getting crits or, all sorts of passive abilities you can go into later that build up your rage, and then you spend your rage on these power-ups, and they do different things, which make the gameplay a lot more dynamic. You'll build up rage, and then like your explosive shot, which normally just does a little bit of AoE damage. If you want to spend the rage, you'd hit the space bar, and it's really cool how it works in the game, where the UI, they'll load up these little vials above your skills, and it lets you know that that's loaded, and then you can decide, okay, like shoot it now, and basically you can turn that normal explosive shot into have a wider range of explosion with increased, like 30% increased damage, and then it'll slow enemies if that's what you decide to spec into. And then you can also set up combos where it sounds really complicated, and it is at first, but it gets really easy, as you figure it out. But you can set up certain combos where you say, okay, whenever I hit my space bar, that means load up 3 power-ups of the increased damage and 1 power-up of the AoE effect. But you have to have this certain amount of rage to do that. You know, you have to make sure that you have enough rage to complete the task. And if you don't want to use the combo, the auto combo kind of loader thing, then you can manually load each of the abilities just manually by hitting the 3 button or 2 button or whatever. Yeah, I'm playing through it with a friend, and we're playing on the hardest difficulty, and it's really, really awesome. So out of all of those like Torchlight type of Diablo games, this one is probably the most enjoyable, and that's really surprising because it's just a $15 downloadable title that's on Steam, you know. So it's great.
Well, I just as soon as you mentioned it, I went and I looked up like a bunch of gameplay footage, just little clips here and there, and the power-up system looks like the one you were talking about. It looks really intuitive and really creative, not something that's been done in depth. The other thing that really drew me to it is the interactions between Katarina, the ghost, and Van Helsing look really well written and really entertaining.
They are, yeah. Yeah, it's really, really well written. Every time you can send her off to the store to sell your items that you've given her, and every time she like leaves or comes back, she has some little like funny quip that she says, you know. And some of the voice acting's a little over the top, but I think I'm being a little critical because I'm a sound guy. But but it's really, really well done. It's one of the highest quality games that I've ever paid $15 for. So it's cool. It's really, really cool. So have you played Diablo or Torchlight or anything like that?
That was one thing I was going to say, actually, is the only thing that looks maybe like subpar is the combat looked a little clunky compared to Diablo 3, but I mean, Diablo 3's combat was just so fluid that maybe that's not a fair comparison.
They're a little different. So I like the combat in Van Helsing a lot. I think I might like it a little better than Diablo 3. Like, and it might depend on how you're playing it, because I've played the range character in Van Helsing and I haven't had that much fun like yet. It was very repetitive, but I'm also like level 11, and like once I get to level 12 I unlock a couple things that I know would change it up. For my main character, I'm playing as like a melee type of tanky dude as well, because I'm playing on the hardest difficulty with a friend who's playing the ranged role. But it's really it keeps you on your tippy toes, because you have to move out of, like, you have to grab the aggro, and then I put out like this AoE flame burst thing, and then what I do is I have this like earthquake ability, which you see in Diablo 3 as well, where you like smash the ground, and in front of you, you know, it creates this earthquake and damages all these mobs. And what I do is I have to build up enough rage to use that, and then I switch to that ability and I use my earthquake, and it uses all my mana. You know, it's just a really mana intensive thing. And then I switch back to my flame AoE thing, and I've spec'd myself where whenever my flame AoE like hits enemies every tick, and the more enemies around it'll do this even more, it gives me mana back. So it's this good kind of like back and forth play that I have between using my abilities, but in the meantime I have to stay out of the way of like the bigger enemies that have, you know, smashes and things that can kill you in 2 shots. It's real technical. I have to make sure that I'm kind of body blocking in front of my co-op partner who I'm playing with range, and so it feels like more keeps me on my tippy toes more than a Diablo does. And Diablo's more about like smashing all your cooldowns whenever they're up, and really, you know, trying to stay out of the way of like the laser beams and all the hardcore stuff that they used in Diablo 3 once you got to like the higher difficulties. But there's something about this that's really enjoyable. It's like you really lose track of time just whenever you're in this this mode of just like using your abilities, and you know, they throw tons of mobs at you. This game's not shy about that at all, and it's just kind of mindless fun, but you are always clicking buttons and doing things. It comes off clunky at first, it really does, but once you kind of get into the game a little bit and you learn how to switch things, and you learn how to set your combos and use your combo points and stuff, then it feels pretty good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it looks hard to pass up for $15.
It's definitely worth the $15 price point, and it's been out for a little while. I think, you know, during the Steam summer sale, I think it went down to $7. But I think it's gonna, you know, it could go on sale soon too, because it's been out for a little bit, and I'm not sure what their sales numbers are, but it's really, really cool, and they're supporting it. Whenever the game first came out, my friend actually bought it for me to play with me, and because we play all those Torchlight and Diablo games together, and we couldn't play co-op together. The co-op was broken. And so they went in there and they patched it pretty fast, and now it works flawlessly, and it's neat. It's like, it definitely feels like its own game. It's not just Diablo 3, masked with, a Van Helsing skin or anything. The Van Helsing world, they have a lot of original stuff to pull from that we haven't really seen in games that much. The main downside of it for me is the amount of items that you get, and the management of it is just a lot. You just have to make yourself learn the keybinds. Like, if you hold shift and hit right click, then the item will get transferred to your pet, your Katarina, because you don't want to be dragging and dropping all the items. And so you just have to make yourself learn those little hotkeys, and then it's much like kind of fishing your way through Photoshop. You just get used to it. But yeah, it's cool. It's really, really cool. So I think you'll like it if you pick it up, and I'll play some co-op with you. It's fun.
I still haven't gotten Torchlight 2 despite it being on sale numerous times.
Yeah.
I just keep meaning to get it and then not.
It's pretty good. I like it.
I played the first one and I liked it quite a bit, and everybody was saying that 2 just improved upon it. So
apparently my husband didn't get my text message because he walked in about 5 minutes ago. But he put a pizza in the fridge, so I know what I'm having for dinner.
Oh,
Nice.
yeah.
Fridge pizza.
It's
Fridge
not
pizza.
delivery, it's DiGiorno.
Actually, it's Papa Murphy's.
Oh,
but,
well, it's not.
Papa Murphy's. Is that local?
So good. No, it's a chain. It's take and bake.
Mm-hmm.
So they make it for you, and the crust is raw, and the cheese is unmelted, and the toppings are uncooked, and then you bake it in your own oven.
That's interesting. I've never actually heard of that before.
You should look them up. Their pizza is really good.
Nice. Do they do that?
Anyway.
They don't do that for thick crust, do they? Just normal crust, I assume.
Well, their crust is rising crust.
Yeah.
It's decent. And I think they have a thin crust too.
Cool.
What's next?
Next is F.E.A.R.
Yay. So, really, really exciting announcement just a couple days ago. I am a huge fan of survival horror, and they announced that they're making a free-to-play F.E.A.R. game online, and I am immeasurably excited. Very, very few details so far, but I think this is going to be one of those games where I am just counting down the days until I can play it.
So what did we know? What was the announcement?
Sorry, speaking of cats, Dante, go away.
He heard you talking about F.E.A.R. It's like, F.E.A.R.
So all we know so far is that it's online, free to play, and the other thing that they mentioned that was important to me anyways is that they're keeping those horror elements that we were so familiar with in the other F.E.A.R. games, because those are my favorite parts, where you're running around doing your thing, and then all of a sudden Alma's in your face and freaking you out, and it's not very often that I scream out loud thanks to a video game, but F.E.A.R. was pretty successful with that. One of the biggest scares I got when I was climbing up a ladder, I think it was in the first one, and as you're climbing up the ladder, you're facing a wall, and then at one point in the wall there's a duct, and it's open, and she's just crouched in the duct staring at you, and you only see it for a split second, and there's an orchestra sting. They did say that they were going to incorporate more of that into this new game, so that's what has me most excited. I cannot wait.
So this is gonna be just a new F.E.A.R. game, very much like the other ones, right? But it's F.E.A.R. Online. So is it it's gonna be free to play, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess it's gonna be exclusively online, because at least the first two F.E.A.R. games, I know they had online play.
Yeah, the
Right.
multiplayer on them was actually a lot of fun.
So this is gonna be what's the game? There's a game that came out recently that reminds me of this kind of environment of just free to play game, and Warframe. Have you guys heard of that Warframe game?
Yes, I've actually played a bit of it.
You have this online, game where you get together with friends, and it has this whole interface where you party up, and then it has you can go into your inventory and customize your stuff. Is that what it seems like? And you kind of go through and play these kind of canned missions where it's kind of like playing I think the latest Resident Evil game that came out, Revelations or whatever, did this, and it was essentially like you get together with 4 other people, go through the missions together, and they're kind of set up for multiplayer play, and they're not super heavy on the whole story thing. Is that kind of the vibe you're getting from this, or?
I hope not,
Yeah.
because the F.E.A.R series had a really good story.
Okay.
You kind of had to read between the lines a little bit to get a lot out of it, but it's still really interesting, and I hope they continue on with it. I didn't play all of the third one, so I'm not entirely sure how far along they got in the storyline with the third game. But the first two, they were really interesting, and I think something that F.E.A.R has done that no other game franchise has really been able to do is meld the first-person shooter military genre that you're used to with what people consider survival horror. I mean, it is truly scary, and you wouldn't think that they'd be able to combine those two elements together effectively, but they do, and that was the thing above all else that really impressed me with it. Because at one moment, you're running through an abandoned building, and you're with your squad mates, and you're trying to hunt down a key or something like that, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you're transported to your own mind, and you're in a hallway where blood is dripping from the ceiling. Yeah. And just the way that they meld the two together, it's really effective, and I hope that they continue on with that pattern. So yeah, I hope they just do what they've been doing the whole time. The production of the F.E.A.R games has kind of been bounced back and forth a lot, and I don't know if the company that's working on this one has worked on any of the F.E.A.R games before in any capacity. I couldn't say for sure, but I know that the F.E.A.R series has a really dedicated fan base who enjoy what it is and what it's about and the concept behind it. So if they don't stick to that, I think they could make a lot of people unhappy.
Yeah. So all we know right now is an announcement. Like, we don't know when we're looking to hear more, or any sort of release window. Did they say 2014 or anything?
All we know is that at some point in the future it will exist.
Okay, or that it exists right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Gamescom probably.
And when is that again?
Yeah, I don't know much about that stuff.
September, October. It's always in the fall. So it's usually around Tokyo Game Show time. Sometimes it's before, sometimes it's after. So yeah, that's probably, if I had
August
to bet
20th.
money on it, I'd say that's when we'll hear more.
Okay.
Gamescom's been turning into a pretty big event over the past few years. And if not, I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, Gamescom is happening around August 20th, I think.
So, like, end of summer, early fall. That's usually when it is.
Oh, that's when Microsoft's Gamescom event is happening, August 20th. So, yeah, within that week, I guess. That week. Cool.
Yeah, it's just that constant tension in the back of your mind, knowing that at some point something really terrifying could happen, that pushed me through it. Because you're just waiting for that next moment to scare the crap out of you.
Nice.
So I'm looking forward to more of that.
Cool.
Can't wait.
Excellent. All right, what's this video game what's it called? Video Game High School?
Yeah, Video Game High School, or VGHS. It's a web series done by Freddie W. and a bunch of other guys who I'm not going to start naming names because I'm sure I'm going to miss somebody, but they're working together. Some of the guys from 5 Second Films are in on the project, and it's a web series, sort of comedy with action. The first season was definitely, I don't want to say Nickelodeon, but it's sort of cute, fun. It's for a very wide audience, as within the gaming subset, I guess. They definitely don't go into like really mature themes, and there's not a lot of there's no gore and things like that. But the first season was kickstarted successfully last year, maybe the year before. I don't remember when the first one came out. And I
think it was 2011.
Yeah, and it was really popular. People really enjoyed it. It was well done. It's a web series with production value akin to Forward Unto Dawn and similar, really, really high quality stuff.
Okay.
And so the second season just aired the first episode last week. And so the first season, they raised just over $250,000 on Kickstarter for it. And for the second season, they raised over $800,000. And they actually posted up a cost breakdown to show people, this is where all the money went.
That's good.
And so it's really interesting seeing what a lot went into it. And they're approaching the second season a little differently. The first one was in a very sort of web series fashion where it was short, maybe 10 to 12-minute episodes. And the new one, they're treating it more as almost like a TV show. So it's going to be 6 30-minute episodes. And so it's going to be slightly longer in total than the first one was. So it's going to let them explore a bit more. And one of the cool things that they're doing with it is that it's actually the first ever show to have a mixed frame rate. So remember when The Hobbit came out and everybody was saying the high frame rate stuff, the people who didn't like it anyway were saying that it looked like a video game, that it was too smooth, and it was really putting people off. So the guys working on VGHS said, okay, well, why don't we make the video game sequences in high frame rate and then release it like that? Because, that's exactly the kind of look that we're going for. So I guess to quickly explain it, the way that it's all about these kids going to a high school where they play video games, because in this universe, that's sort of the high-profile career is being a pro gamer. And so there's these sort of seed schools for these, big companies that have video game players. So there's a varsity team and a junior varsity team. And whenever they play a game, whether it be a first-person shooter or an MMO or a fighting game or a racing game, they then shoot those sequences as if the people playing the game are in the game doing those actions. So they have a lot of fun jumping back and forth between here's the person at the keyboard and then here's the person's avatar playing, shooting a bunch of people, throwing grenades at them, stuff like that.
They do some... Sorry, go
I was
ahead.
just going to ask for kind of a general breakdown about the show, what it's about, and how it's kind of shot or whatever. So this is not a reality show. That's all I know about it.
Yeah,
okay.
It's a narrative. It's their own story.
Okay.
It's kind of a coming of age story.
Yeah, it
almost.
really is. It's a very classic. Kid goes to school. He's thrust into that position because he's not super rich. He's not super privileged, but he's a pretty good gamer. He makes it into the school, and there's this big bully rival that's always beating him, and he's got the girl, and the new kid falls in love with the girl and wants to be with her, and she's a good player too, and she's with this other guy because they're both on the varsity team and that kind of thing. And so it's all about him sort of overcoming that, and although they play fun with a lot of tropes, and they have a lot of YouTube personalities playing some of the characters. Like, I don't know if you guys watch any Epic Mealtime stuff.
Yeah.
Harley plays the principal of the school.
Harley is which one is he?
The big bearded guy.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So
no way.
But yeah, it's a fun
That's
coming
awesome.
of age. They have a lot of fun with the action sequences in the first person shooter games, and they shoot those. If you know anything about Freddie Wong's sort of YouTube presence, is he does a lot of video game type stuff, as if it's here we're filming these guys and it's like they're in the game and they're doing things like the game. So they do a lot of VFX stuff to match that.
The in the game parts are actually my favorite sequences because they do a lot of cultural references and stuff to gamers.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you go AFK, the character who's in the game is just standing there and he can't move and he can't talk. So there's a part in the very first episode of season 1 where the kid goes AFK and the guy on the other team is messing with him. Like he, puts him in funny positions. They take really funny game references like that, gamer references, and incorporate them in interesting and clever ways. Mm-hmm. So it's really enjoyable, and I can't wait to see what they do with season 2. I actually haven't watched the first episode of season 2 yet, so I have to check it out.
So if somebody was to want to watch this, where would I find find it. Is it on Netflix?
It's all up on YouTube.
It is on.
And on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. Yeah. It's on Netflix. It's not split into episodes on Netflix though. It's only they've crammed it all into like one movie sized.
Okay. Does that work for the format though, or should I watch it in episodes or what?
No, it's fine on Netflix. I wanted to watch it again, and when I saw that it was on Netflix and it said there was only one episode, and I was like, well, that's weird. They only have one episode up, and then I realized that it was actually all of the episodes compressed into one. So it doesn't really make a difference.
Okay.
I mean, it saves you from a few mouse clicks. That's about it, I think.
Okay.
And then season 2 is airing on YouTube and on their website. And I think I don't think YouTube is able to do the double frame rate, like where in the normal sequences it's 24 frames a second, and then in the game sequences it's 48. So on their website, rocketjump.com, they have the high frame rate mixed episodes up on there as they're airing.
Huh. Excellent. Cool. Yeah, I'll check that out. So, what video game high school?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. That's all I got. I'm talked out.
Oh, boy.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in to episode 3. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and leave us reviews. You can find us online at meritgetpodcast.com, and on that website you'll find links to our Facebook and Twitter pages. Make sure you like and follow us, and we will see you next week. I'm Ashley.
I'm Patrick.
I'm Andre.
I'm Sean.
Catch you later, guys.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.
Later.
Bye, noobs. No, just kidding. Don't put that in.